Welcome back to Project Swift. At this point in the project, it's just a matter of removing the wiring harness and the fuel cell and a few other ancillary items, and you're down to the bare frame. At this point, we took that bulkhead off and took it down to a media blaster who removed all the paint. And after that, I took it to a welder because in the bottom of that chassis, there were hundreds of holes that needed to be filled in. There was some question as to whether or not that would actually warp the frame. It didn't. Hey, we're down here at Contractor's Welding Supply and picking up the Swift chassis today. Had all the holes to be filled in. These guys did a really nice job. By all evidence, it looks like the frame is warped, as some people predicted, but it's in great shape. So, going to take it home. And what's really neat about this part of the project is that it's now time to turn around and go the other way. It's been disassembly so far and inspection and all that kind of stuff. Now I get to throw some primer on this and some paint and start putting stuff back together. So 90% done, 90% to go. You know how these projects go, but it's kind of exciting to be turning the other direction. This is where it becomes very, very rewarding. So anyway, stick with us here on Project Swift. All right, so we're out here in the garage doing a little bit of fabricating. The chassis is completely naked and the paint is on it. Well, it's on the chassis, but it's still in the box. In a couple days, it's going to the paint booth to get primer and then the top coat, which I'm really excited about the color I chose. And don't you want to know what it is? You're gonna have to wait. Anyway, doing a little fabricating. This plate, it goes on the front here. That's why it says front. Your master cylinders go on here, and there's a little bit of a work access here. I wasn't going to put this in. I've seen other guys who just had these three holes and nothing else, but I got a feeling I'll need the access to put the pedals back in. So, but this one's kind of a beater. You know, it's a little out of whatever here and there, bent up a little bit. So, making up a new one and getting ready to pull this protective cover off, so let's see how that looks. Alright, so I still have a little more filing to do and clean up probably with some emery cloth, which, man, I'd like to figure out where to get some emery cloth. I can find emery paper all over the place, but that doesn't live as long as emery cloth. Yeah, this doesn't look too bad. The hole cutout could use a little shaping here and there, but as crudely as I laid it out, it doesn't look too bad. I haven't done any fabrication in a long time, but I used to do quite a bit of it when I was building my airplane, which is still flying. Alright, well, it doesn't look too bad. Still have a little cleanup to do here, and some work with the old handheld milling machine, also known as a file. And we'll have ourselves a new bulkhead. And now I can rivet in the places I want to rivet instead of the other one. All these rivet holes you see here have been welded, and so I'll be staggering the rivets. There's also a bunch of extra holes here, why I have no idea. But on these holes here especially, I'll be drilling through at these locations, so I'm not drilling through welds, which is kind of hard. It'll all be virgin material, and that's the way to go. So anyway, it should be a nice solid bulkhead front. Before sending the chassis off to the painter, I did some final prep with a red pad and took it actually to a Ford dealership a friend of mine works at, and he did his magic in the paint booth.
trip there.
After I got the chassis back from the paint booth, we let it sit out in the sun for a day or so, just to let the paint cure before we started working on it again. Now in this segment, what I've done here is I've flipped the chassis upside down. There's a brand new sheet of aluminum between the chassis and what you see here. What you see here is the old floor pan, and I'm using it as a template because what I'm doing is I'm staggering the rivet holes from the old locations so that I'm drilling through virgin metal on the frame. And it was an effective way to just make sure that we had fresh metal to drill through and to rivet through. And it worked out very, very well. Now, one other thing as I'm doing this, in attaching the new floor pan, I did not use an adhesive. I know there's a lot of talk about whether or not you should use a bonding agent between the new floor pan and the frame. I decided not to do it. I think the old-fashioned way works just fine. The original Swifts, as far as I know, did not have a bonding material between the floor pan and the frame. And the floor pan that you see before you that I'm using as a template, when I took that off, there was evidence that it had been glued at one time, but there was no evidence that the glue was still working. I mean, it came right off. As soon as I drilled out the last rivet, the whole thing just came off like it wasn't attached at all. So I'm a little skeptical of them. I think under really good conditions with brand new metal being bonded with the right material, maybe that helps, maybe it doesn't. I don't think that it was the right thing to do. There's really no substitute between having a good piece of metal to bond between two pieces of metal, and a good rivet through the middle of the material, and call it a day. Also, you notice that I'm using rivets to locate the holes to keep the pan where it's supposed to be. I wish I had 150 Cleco clamps. I lent the ones out that I did have to somebody years ago and never saw them again, but at any rate, this works for what we're doing. The poor man's Cleco clamp. All told, there was about 130 rivets holding the pan on. And so it was quite a bit of drilling. I think I went through half a dozen 1/8-inch drill bits, changing them out now and then. Every time I changed out a drill bit, I was like, why didn't I do this 20 minutes ago? Because they were pretty dull by the time I was willing to throw them away. But anyway, we got them in. Now, I did have some help for at least a brief period of time. This young man named Ryan was over one night. We had a great time working together, but unfortunately, he ended up transferring out of town. Oh. So here's one last look at the underside. I have one more thing to do before I turn it right side up, and that is to put the for sale sign on the bottom. Every Formula car I've ever driven has a for sale sign on the bottom, and if it's ever readable, it's for sale. Okay, what we have here is the right rear lower suspension wishbones, and they came off the car just in the condition you see. Looks like they've been sandblasted a couple times, and I'm just going to carefully take some measurements so I have a starting place when I put it back together. And then disassemble it, clean it up, strip it, inspect it, paint it, and put it back together.